It's the late 1960s. The Vietnam War is escalating and the US military is drafting hundreds of thousands of young men, many of whom are in not great shape. And the Air Force had a problem. How do you quickly measure the endurance of all these new soldiers? That's when one doctor, Dr. Kenneth Cooper, lined them up on a track. He pulled out a stopwatch and said, "Run for 12 minutes as far as you can." Now it sounds crude, but could something this simple predict your endurance, your health, and even how long you might live? Now it's important to note that Dr. Cooper wasn't just improvising here. He was actually trying to create a field test for something called VO2 Max. VO2 Max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use when you go all out. Think of it like your engine size. The bigger the engine, the more oxygen you can utilize to turn into energy. So naturally, VO2 Max was an amazing way for the military to test these incoming soldiers as they were coming into their ranks. But here's the catch. For decades, the only way to reliably measure VO2 Max was in a lab with treadmills, masks, and machines. And that worked for scientists and elite athletes, but not for the average soldier or anyone outside of elite athletics. And this is where Dr. Cooper changed everything. With one stopwatch and a 12-minute run, he democratized endurance science. What had once been locked inside labs was suddenly available to anyone with a track and the will to run. It turns out that Dr. Cooper's 12-minute field test was about 90% as accurate as the lab VO2 Max test at the time, which was more than enough for their needs. But of course, not everyone agreed with him. At the time, many doctors believed that strenuous activity might actually be harmful for your heart. Some even threatened to revoke his medical license. The idea that you could prevent disease rather than just treating it with medicine sounded crazy. In 1968, Dr. Cooper published his book, Aerobics, and in it, he gave everyday people a system for improving their health. He took cardio activities like running, cycling, swimming, and even hiking, and assigned them all point values. Rack up enough points in a week, and not only were you training for improved performance, but also for overall health and longevity. And again, this was a little bit outside the norm. You have to remember that this is 1968, and if you were seen running down the street or riding your bike as an adult, people would think that you're either running late for work or you've gone off the deep end. Things that we take for granted today, like run clubs, gyms, or even running shoes, were unheard of at this time. But despite all the resistance, Dr. Cooper's message stuck. Within a few years, millions of Americans were jogging. Schools and gyms adopted his test, the military standardized it, and companies like Nike and Adidas seized the moment, creating shoes for this brand new market. And this boom didn't just create runners. It birthed modern fitness culture. From Jane Fonda's VHS tapes in the 80s to P90X in the 2000s to Peloton today. All of it traces back to the aerobic revolution that Cooper set in motion. Dr. Cooper and his science had opened the door, and the fitness industry ran through it at full speed. But it also got complicated again. The simple, democratized idea that anyone can measure their fitness with a stopwatch and a track soon got buried under fads, gadgets, and products built to monetize his vision. Fast forward to today, and VO2 Max is still central to elite sports. Olympians, Tour de France cyclists, marathoners, they're all tested in labs to guide their training and track progress over time. But here's where it takes an interesting twist. A lot of the products that we've seen over time that have made things more complicated are also bringing the VO2 Max test back into our own hands. Companies like Garmin, Polar, and Apple, and most modern smartwatches can estimate your VO2 Max from your daily runs. And to be clear, they are far from perfect, but they're usually within 5 to 15% of lab results, depending on your device and your fitness level. But to me, the key is not the test, but it's the retest. Because VO2 Max testing is now easily accessible on your wrist, you're able to test and then retest over time. That way you can track your progress. Watches give you trends over time. Even if the number is off within that 5 to 15%, you're still getting enough data points to show you trends over the course of your year. So recently I had the opportunity to do a VO2 Max test at my gym using a mask and a very expensive machine. And I was excited to compare the number that I get from my watch to the test from the machine. And to my surprise, the number that I got from the machine was identical to the one that my Garmin tells me. Of course, your results will vary It all depends on the accuracy of your heart rate monitor. Sometimes wrist-based heart rate is not the most accurate. So if you're using a chest strap with your watch, that will help make this number a little bit more accurate. But this tells me that this number is going to be good enough for most people. The lab results do give me more details, like how much fat I'm burning versus carbs at different heart rate zones, but the big picture was the same. I find it mind-boggling to know that the tech that used to be locked up in labs is now built into the smartwatch that you're using every day to track your runs. So why does VO2 max matter to you, especially if you're not an Olympian or a soldier? And that's because VO2 max isn't just about performance or racing faster. Research shows that it's one of the strongest predictors of health and longevity. People with higher VO2 max live longer, healthier lives across dozens of studies. Of course, VO2 max is just one data point and it doesn't tell you everything. For performance, things like running economy and lactate threshold matter too. For long-term health, strength, muscle mass, and metabolic health are just as important when it comes to predicting longevity. Still, VO2 max is one of the best single predictors that we've got, and the good news is that it is trainable. Here's what the research shows. Sedentary people can raise their VO2 max by 15 to 25% in just a few months of consistent training. With long-term structured work, some might see gains of up to 40%. Counterintuitively, elite athletes or people who have been training for a long time and are already near their ceiling might only improve 5 to 10%. So how do you train it? The recipe has 5 key ingredients. It's pretty simple. Ingredient number 1, and the most important of all, is consistency. 3 to 4 aerobic sessions per week is enough to see improvements. Ingredient number 2 is zone 2 training. Moderate effort, conversational pace, incline walking, very easy jogging, cycling around the park. You don't need any tech to track it. The easiest, most effective way to get started with it is to do the talk test. So you should be able to speak a sentence, maybe 2 sentences, as you're in your zone 2 pace. You might not want to speak, but you could if you had to. Another thing that I like to do when I'm doing my zone 2 training is to do 5 breaths in through the nose and out through the nose without opening my mouth. If I can do that fairly comfortably, that means I'm probably in my zone 2 effort. Ingredient number 3 is intervals. If you're doing the 3 to 4 aerobic training sessions per week, one of those should be a little bit higher intensity. Hard efforts, 2 to 5 minutes at a time with equal rest. So if you do a 2-minute hard push, do 2 minutes at a very easy pace, walking or very easy jogging, and then repeat. That will be enough to push your ceiling. So you're training it from both sides. Zone 2 training is training the low end, the aerobic, and the interval training is training the top end. Ingredient number 4 is strength training, 2 to 3 times per week. I like to do full body sessions each time. It allows you to train your legs, your lower body, your joints, your core. This is going to help improve 2 things. One will be your fuel economy. So if we look at the engine analogy from above, higher VO2 max gives you a bigger engine. Having more strength will give you better fuel economy, so you can use the same amount of energy to go farther. The second thing that it helps improve is your robustness over time, your durability, so that way you can stick with your training over time and keep that consistency that we were talking about before. And the last ingredient, and probably the most overlooked when it comes to training, is number 5, recovery. Sleep, nutrition, and rest. Rest is probably the most important of them all because you don't actually get stronger from training. Training breaks your body down. It's a stress on the body, but where you get better is when you recover and when your body builds back stronger. So yes, there is a genetic component to VO2 max. You could be born with a bigger engine, but training decides how much of that engine you actually use. And that's exactly what we're aiming to do with Ultralife and our Always Ready program. Dr. Cooper democratized endurance with a stopwatch and a track. We want to democratize long-term athleticism. You don't need a garage full of fancy equipment. All you need are some dumbbells, a bench, and a consistent plan. And that's the program that I'm currently using as I train for my ultra marathons that I have coming up, I'm using the Always Ready program for both my interval days and also my strength training. In the Always Ready program, you get 3 strength training workouts per week. We offer options whether you're going to a full gym or you just have a set of dumbbells and a bench. And most importantly, what you get from this program is Juliet and I looking over your shoulder, answering any questions that you have regarding the plan. If you have forum questions, you can send us videos, and you're in constant communication with us to make sure that you're hitting all of your goals. So if you're interested in checking out our Always Ready program or any of our Ultralife custom coaching options, check out the link in the description below. Dr. Kenneth Cooper's 12-minute run was designed to prepare soldiers for war. At first, his ideas were resisted, even ridiculed. But his persistence, his research and advocacy transformed fitness, once a very niche thing, into a phenomenon. He's remembered today as the father of aerobics, the man who shifted medicine from treatment to prevention, and who helped create the fitness culture that we all live in today. The test that once told the military if a soldier was ready for war now tells you if you are ready for life. Raise your VO2 max, raise your endurance, raise your health, and raise your future.